We're now going to look at a different model, the Hecksher-Ohlin model. And in the Hecksher-Ohlin model, trade does not occur because of different technology. Trade occurs because the two countries have different relative endowments of the two different factors of production. So one country will be relatively rich with capital and relatively less endowed with labor, and the other country will be the reverse. So here those descriptions are laid out. We're outlining that the Hecksher-Ohlin model assumes fundamentally trade occurs because the countries have different, quote, resources, that is, different factors of production, amounts of factors of production. That's different from the Ricardian model that assumes different technologies. It's also a different model from a model where we assume people have different tastes. Now, page 28 of my notes has a small error, and there's a point it should say, of course, the equivalent is that computer production is capital intensive. So there's one word that needs to be changed on page 28 of my notes. Now, the setup here for the model is that for both countries, shoe production is always labor intensive, and computer production is always capital intensive. So both countries have what we call the same technology. And you can get there by assuming the production functions in both industries look a particular way. One way to guarantee that you'll have that result is to assume that the isoquants have a kind of L shape which forces production to always occur at the same ratio of the two resources. This is an example of what I mean by the right-angled isoquant. You can always force industries to always be capital intensive or labor intensive by using this sort of isoquant. You don't actually have to go this extreme. You can force the capital and labor intensities to be the way you want for the two sorts of production with sort of curvy isoquants, as long as you give them the right pattern. I'm not going to go into this anymore. Just take it as true that we can set up the model to guarantee that production of computers is always capital intensive and production of shoes is always labor intensive. So this is a statement of our assumption about the pattern of production conditions in the two countries. So now we're going to work through the assumptions of the Hecksher-Ohlin model. Number one, there are two factors of production, labor and capital, also called resources in this model. It's confusing, I know, but that's the way it is. Two factors of production, labor and capital, that is resources, can move freely between industries within a country. Assumption two, shoe production is labor intensive, that is, it requires more labor per unit of capital to produce shoes than computers. The foreign country is labor abundant, by which we mean that the labor capital ratio in the foreign country exceeds that in the home, as shown there. And the home country is capital abundant, as shown there. Assumption 4 says that goods, shoes and computers, can be traded freely between the countries, but resources are stuck in their home country. The fundamental technology used to produce the two goods are identical across the countries. So in this model, technology is not an explanation for why trade happens. They both have the same technology. And again, technology means basically the trade-offs between producing the two sorts of goods. Consumer tastes are the same across countries, so trade cannot be explained by different consumer tastes. So as it says there, to repeat, the home country is capital abundant and production of computers is a capital intensive operation. Therefore, the home production possibility frontier is skewed toward the production of computers. And the foreign country is the opposite. Since tastes in the two countries are identical, that is, the pattern of indifference curves actually is the same for both countries, why does the home country produce relatively more computers and the home country relatively more shoes? Well, it's because producing computers needs a lot of capital, and the home country is relatively well endowed with capital. The foreign country is relatively well endowed with labor, which is the factor of production used intensively for making shoes. So the foreign country will end up in autarky, producing relatively more shoes and fewer computers compared to the home country. And we'll stop here. That is showing the no trade equilibrium, where each country is in autarky. Now, the next round will be opening up to trade and seeing what happens.